Hello everybody and welcome to the Python crash course. Now, before we begin with actually coding our advanced backdoor in Python, we need to cover some of the basics that you need to know in order to begin coding your own programs. Now, this will not be a Python course since that would take too long. What I will do is I will just briefly explain in a few videos the most important things that you need to know in order to code in Python. We will cover some of the basics and then after that we will go into the coding of our own backdoor. So before we begin, there are two things you will need if you actually skip to this part, since maybe some people only got this course because of the coding section. So if you did that, what you want to do is basically just install Wine. We did that in the previous section, in the system hacking section. So you need to install Wine. You need to have this path right here, so cd root.wine, and then if you type here ls, you will need to have this drive C installed right here. In that drive C, you also need to have the Python. So if you go to the drive C, let me just enlarge this and edit this or make this zoom in so you can see it better. You will see that right here I have Python 27 installed, and with that Python 27 I also have installed the PyInstaller module, which we will use in our Kali Linux machine in order to make our programs executable and in order to make them be able to run on Windows. So those are the things that you will need. Basically that's the only thing that you need. After that we will only code the program in simple nano command or in the Python interpreter. So before we begin, let me actually edit this a little bit. So let me make this transparent background a little bit better so you can see the code better. So if I just put it like this, or let's make it fully transparent, and let's close this. So what we want to do, let us navigate to our root directory first. So before we actually code anything, what you need to know is that there are actually Python interpreters in terminal module or available in terminal. So what you can do is just type here Python, and what this will do is it will open up the interpreter for the Python command prompt. So here you can execute any Python commands or any Python program you want. What we will use this for is basically in order to check out the syntax of a program, so you don't have to go through the entire code in order to check out if there is some error in the program. What you can do is just basically just type here anything, so a equals 3, which will actually give the value of 3 to the a. But if you, for example, type a equals b, it will give you an error saying name b is not defined. So once you run a bigger code and you get, for example, an error, it would be much easier in order to run some of the commands right here in order to check if you specify the correct syntax for them. So that is mostly what we will do for the Python interpreter. The programs that we will code will be coded in a normal file .py. But before we begin, let us actually start off with the simple instructions or simple commands or simple basically scripts that we will run in our interpreter in order to see what we can do and what we can do. So first thing we want to check out is the one that I already typed, is actually giving a value to some constant or to some changeable. So we gave the value to the a equals 3, and if we just type here a, it will give us that the value of a equals 3. But if we change the value of a to 5, for example, and we type a once again, it will now change the value of a to 5. So this right here command doesn't have its value anymore. So next thing you can do is, for example, let me just exit this, clear this a little bit, make this a little bit larger, and then run the Python interpreter. Let's, for example, give the value to a equals 5 and value to b equals 3. So what you can do is perform any basically addition, subtraction, multiplication, or whatever you want. For example, a plus b, and it will give you the value of a plus b. Or you can also type here c equals a plus b, and what this will do is it will give the value of addition of these two numbers to value c. So if we just type here c, the c has value of 8, which is the same as this command. We just specified the result of this command to be stored in this variable. So What you can also do is a divided by b, which will give you 1. Since this is not a module, this will only give you the times that b is consistent in a. So 5 divided by 3 will give you the 1, since 3 is only consistent in 5 one time. But if you type here, for example, float a equals b, this will give you the same value, but this will give you the point 0 after that. Now why this does that is because it stores the value in decimal, and it will give you the same result just with the additional decimal number after it. So float basically means, if you just type here any number, so float a, which we gave the value of 5, it will print out 5.0. Float of b will print out value of 3.0, or basically just 3, just it will add the additional .0 after it. So that is another thing you need to know. What you can do basically is also store a string, so c doesn't have to be a number. For example, since we specified here that c equals a plus b, which is 8, we can type here c equals and then we give it a string. So for example, hello world. And what this will do right now, c won't be 8 anymore, it will actually be a string, which is hello world. And if you just type here print c, which is the command, print c, it will print out the string that is consistent in the c variable. Now, make sure to differentiate the syntax between Python 2 and Python 3. They are very similar, but for example, print c wouldn't really work in Python 3. You will need to specify print and then open brackets, and then c, and then close brackets, and then hello world. Now, that will work in Python 2, but the syntax won't work in Python 3. So, what we will do is we will use Python 2 in this crash course. So, you can use the syntax for Python 3. I believe in Python 2 both of those work, but if you're using Python 3, make sure to check out the correct syntax for a command that we run. Now also some of the libraries that we need to use might not be available for Python 3, so also be aware of that. Now let's see what else we can do. So we saw how we can actually add a value to a single variable. We can add two variables and put it in a third variable. We can also check the float value of a variable. We can also store a string in a variable. But let's say, for example, we want to specify a value. So let's say c equals 5 now. And we want to type that string equals, so string is another variable which will store a string. This number is, and then we specify the % and then d. And then we close the quotes. Now what this will do is basically it will, after we specify in the open brackets, so close the quotes, open brackets, another %, and then c. Once you type right here, let me see, invalid syntax. String object is not callable. Let's see. Okay, so, and then we type here string. Okay, so just a little problem with the syntax. What this command right here will do is basically this will store a string with a value right here of c. So if c was, for example, 8, the string would be this number is 8. If string c was 3, this would be this number is 3. So this %d right here is referenced with the %c right here. Now %c is just referring to put the value of c instead of these two signs right here. So if we were to change the value of c, for example, for any other value, this string would be different. So that's also another thing that you can do with Python. Now, as I said before, this will be just a simple crash course. We will also cover functions and classes, but we will only do them briefly so you can understand in basics how things work. If you want to fully understand everything, you need to have some previous knowledge of Python, or if you can just watch some other courses or tutorials that will teach you a little bit in depth of Python. So let me just do a little trick right here. So import OS system, whoops, clear. I believe this is the command. OS, or it's os.system. Okay, just a little bit of command to clear your screen. So let's see what else we can do right here. Now, there are also Boolean values which can be either true or false, but we will cover them in more detail in the next video where we actually do the loops, since they are mostly used in some of the loop parts of the code. So we will do that in the next video. But for now on, let's see how we can actually do the same previous command but just with strings. So in the previous command, we saw that string equals, so if we just type here string equals this number is then %d sign, and instead of %d we specify to put the value of c. But let's say if we want to type here, for example, string1 equals this, or let's actually add a string equals, this is a new value, so let's add a normal string, hello world. So if we just type here string, this will put us a value of the inside of the string. And what we want to do right now is just type here string1 equals, and then our quotes, our string is then 2 dots, and then %s sign, and then after that %string. So what this will do is same with the previous command, just the %s is referred to a variable that is storing a string. So right now you can guess that the output of string1 will be our string is hello world. So if we just type here enter and just type here string1, you will see that our string is hello world. So %d is referring to numbers and %s is referring to strings. %f is referred to float numbers, I believe. Let me just type here. So let's say b equals float, or b equals 3.0. And then we type here string2 equals our number is, and then %f, and then %b. And if you just type here string2, this will print out the float number value of b value, which will actually add us as additional digits right here. So make a difference between the %f, %s, and %d. There are others as well, but only for now on we need to know these three, or basically we do not even need to know the float value. We need to know the %d and %s. So just make sure to remember that, since this will something that we will use in our backdoor. So that will be about it for these variables in this tutorial. This is just something very simple. We saw how we can actually add a value to a variable, how we can print something, how we can store strings into a variable, and how we can actually print out the string with a different variable. So this is the example. In the next video we will cover some of the other basics for Python. Make sure that you at least stick with this part of the Python crash course if you don't have any previous knowledge with Python, or else you will really hardly follow the backdoor creation that we will do later on. So that will be about it for this tutorial. I hope I see you in the next one, and take care. Bye.